Welcome to Round Hill Radio. Through our conversations, we discover the holy and the ordinary, look for moments of grace and peace, and redefine what we're talking about. We talk about faith. Hey, Lillian.
Hello.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
We're laughing because we were unsure who was recording the podcast this week, and Lillian is underprepared.
I have my Bible,
You
which
have
is all we
been
need.
Cramming in a way that I respect and recognize from my own graduate school exploits.
Yeah.
I have to tell you, I was thinking about this in advance, that I feel like this is sort of like a metaphor for ministry in general, of just like diving in, which made me think about, so I'm gonna tell a little story time before we start. So I was raised in a quite large church. Some could call it mega, but it is not. It does, well, it used to have traditional music. I don't know about it anymore. But we used to go on choir tour every year. And my choir director was quite a character. We'll put it that way. Mm-hmm. He's an organist. He's from Enterprise, Alabama. And he used to sit us down like at least every other day and like pontificate at us about life, the universe, everything. And he'd sit down, he'd cross his legs, and he'd go, now, this is a microcosm of life. Right, this right here, this is a microcosm of life. And he'd always say that about how like these experiences where you were having that were like challenging us or whatever, this was like expressive of the rest of your life and career. And I was just thinking of like you getting shoved onto the podcast today as like a microcosm of life, of ministry. I'm doing the accent so badly, and I know that, but I've like blocked it out in my head, that particular accent.
I've had a deep training of figuring it out.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes,
yeah,
you just got a little time to,
I love it.
Read the summary of a book of the Bible and be like, oh yeah, so this is where we're at.
You're ready to go.
Yeah,
no, I know. I know we're gonna be amazing. It made me think about, and I lost the thought. So we're just gonna move on.
Yeah.
So today's reading is from 1 Samuel. We have a selection of verses. We have chapter 17, verses 38 through 40, and then 48 and 49, which makes me wonder what happened 41 through 47, but we'll get to that later. Here we go. Then Saul dressed David in his own gear, putting a coat of armor on him and a bronze helmet on his head. David strapped his sword on over the armor, but he couldn't walk around well because he'd never tried it before. I can't walk in this, David told Saul, because I've never tried it before. So he took them off. He then grabbed his staff and chose 5 smooth stones from the stream bed. He put them in his pocket of his shepherd's bag, and with a sling in hand went out to the Philistine. The Philistine got up and moved closer to attack David, and David ran quickly to the front line to face him. David put his hand in his bag and took out a stone. He slung it, and it hit the Philistine on his forehead. The stone penetrated his forehead, and he fell face down on the ground. And we had agreed where I was going to say Philistine, and then I made a different choice.
Don't think it.
It's okay.
I think
question one for our audience:
our community
is it Philistine or
understands.
Philistine? So we were discussing before I hit record, that isn't it interesting? And I use interesting in the most expansive use of that word. That this is a children's story.
Often, yeah. And I was reflecting. I don't know exactly. So I wasn't here when this worship series was being put together. I don't know why they chose these verses to tell the story of David and Goliath, because the Philistine is Goliath, right. And that's this, this story that you hear, and you have your young but mighty man and the big old scary dude,
right?
And so as I was reading it, there was this part of me where it's like, oh, maybe it's about trying new things, because he's like, oh, I can't do this. I've never done this before. But it's not about trying new things, because he's immediately like, well, I will go with the familiar.
Yeah.
The thing that I already know. So that's also, I get that can be its own message, but often in ministry, we're trying to kind of push people out of their comfort zone.
Right. And also, to me, the story of David and Goliath does feel like, if you're going to name 10 stories from the Bible, it'll probably, like, off the top of your head, probably make it in for, like, the normal person. I consider myself normal in this situation. One of the very few times I do. But, in this idea of, like, the small overcoming the sort of the mighty. But you were telling me that this is essentially the prequel, the origin story of David, King David, right?
Yes.
So this is King David.
So yeah, and so something that I kind of found out as I was learning is there's a lot of stories people assume that you know in the Bible because they would make the top 10.
Sure.
To the extent that in my Hebrew Bible class at one point we got to Samson and Delilah, and he was like, my professor was like, and then there's like Samson and Delilah. Everyone knows that one. And I walked out of class and one of my classmates is like, I don't know that one. I don't know that one.
Yeah. And I know the names, but I couldn't be like, is that the one with there's some hair happening? That's all I got.
And so it's one of those things where I think there's a lot of assumptions that either one, you know the story, or number two, you know the context of the story.
Right. Or it's like, you know, kind of about the story and you have like the general outline, but it's like, have you actually read it? Have you actually read? And then of course, as our conversation a couple weeks ago, like, which version did you read? Because as we have said many times on the podcast, we used many different versions for copyright issues. We want to make sure we honored the rules there. So this is the Common English Bible, which is interesting. And then you have yours.
New Revised Standard Version.
Right.
Which is over here.
Your best bud. And so it's, it's like our understanding of it can vary so much based on which version we read and then like kind of the like memory of it.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I probably had this, I used to have this like coloring book as a kid that was like Bible story coloring book. And it was really just the high point.
Yeah.
Which actually makes me think of...
it's the things that are fun to color.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good story for like... Yeah. Small but mighty, right? Like the idea of sometimes when you feel small, it can be an encouraging story of like you can face big things, right? But is that message that like you're small but mighty and you can face big things, is that the point of the story, do you think? Is that really why that story was being told?
So I don't know.
Okay.
So the context of this, because this is a story we know, but it's in a book of the Bible that many people probably could not name off the top of their head.
Right.
1 Samuel.
Yeah.
There are 2 books of Samuel.
Who knew?
Samuel dies like 8 chapters into the first book of Samuel. So why are they called
First and Second
Samuel? I don't know.
Yeah.
But 1st and 2nd Samuel is kind of like this history story, a little bit of Saul, but mostly of David.
Okay.
And it's talking a lot about how great David is. There's a lot of books in the Bible which are like, David's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And so this is this story of David, though he is the youngest, though he has these older brothers that are stronger and mightier, through a variety of factors, he is kind of chosen and set up to be this next big king who is so wise and amazing and super cool. And so this is a story towards the beginning of this whole overarching story of David, where it's like, this is this cool thing he's doing. And this is not in our text, but the reason that David wins is because of his deep faith.
Okay.
So that was one of the things that I was, reading off screen before the video, is this is a story not only of a small boy doing a great thing, but a small boy who will become king doing a great thing because he loves God so much.
Okay.
And so it is on its own this story, but it is part of this overarching narrative of this is our king who's super, super great. Listen to the story of his beginning, which is a different approach to a story because there's an agenda to it, which is a different than just like encouraging individuals generally, as opposed to kind of venerating someone who would go on to become king.
So like, how do you deal with that? How do you reconcile those two?
I think there's a lot of stories where they have these kind of like twin like aspects to them where it's okay, what is the context within which it was written? What is the context within which we remember them today?
Right.
And I don't think it's inherently wrong to find our own meaning from things. Everyone is always interpreting. I think that one of the reasons that as I was preparing this, so I had about, like 45 minutes, but if. And so I was looking at the scripture and I was like, this is kind of brutal.
Yeah.
This is kind of violent. And there's a lot of aspects of the Bible which are violent in ways we forget, including pretty much every time in the Bible it says servant, it means slave.
Sure.
And so there's these like little things where a lot of stories read differently if you read them like that.
Yeah.
And so there's this kind of question of like, especially when we're telling scripture to children, like how early do you unpack that? Or when you're interpreting scripture for yourself, you're like, every time I read scripture, do I have to think about this? Or sometimes am I thinking about how it was told to me when I was a child, or how I might read it if I was just thinking about a message I desperately need today? And so as I was reading this for this podcast and thinking about this in terms of we're doing an intergenerational worship service this Sunday, there was a part of me that's like, why is this, especially the translation we used, the stone penetrated his forehead.
Yeah.
And he fell face down on the ground. I was like, ouch.
Yeah. I picture it like one of those old timey like cartoons from like 60, 70 years ago that was like I guess the whole face going
just like a big old boulder.
Yeah, it's like everything like the physics don't quite exist quite right in cartoons, like one of those old like Popeye ones or something.
Yeah.
Those are great. Anyways.
But yeah, it's a really odd thing that exists where it's just this kind of in the middle of a book that we don't really know, that maybe we remember David, but we don't necessarily remember all the stories, but we remember this one,
right?
Because for some reason it speaks to us in this way where we're like, either it's compelling or it's inspiring or it's something that people remember, or it's just something that's told a lot and it just happened to be one of the ones that stuck.
I think people like an underdog story.
People do like an underdog story.
Like my spouse, he will, if he's watching football or any sporting event, right? He will always root for the underdog, like to a fault at this point. If it's not his team, friends here will know. So my husband's a Jets fan, which means
I know what that means.
Always an underdog, forever and ever. They are now, I'm assuming because they lost last night, they're now 0-4 for the season. Don't get me started. So he is like the identity of like the underdog fan. And so he will always root for the underdog teams. And so I think there's something, I feel like there's some people that like to there's like that bandwagon of like the teams that are winning, people will hop on and cheer for them. And then there's like the underdog people. And there's like kind of two camps when it comes to football like this. It's very interesting to me. But it's like I think they yearn for that moment, like the when David felled Goliath like a tree. That's how I picture it. That it's that idea of like you've been rooting for the underdog and then your team finally wins. And that moment, that payoff, that like the I'm using quotes here for our audio only listeners, that like the strong and the mighty are defeated by the arrow, the quote, the weak and the small and the timid, or just that sense of like that I think we all carry that sort of sense of like most of us don't feel like we're mighty most days. And so that's just something like we see ourselves in that
And
idea.
it's so
like,
vindicating.
yeah, that like,
Yeah.
it's like, it's a movie story. Like it's something you could write into a whole movie about.
Yeah.
I feel like that just is these few chapters.
And I think that so much of the Bible as a whole, and the Hebrew Bible especially, really taps into this like underdog. Which is why so many of the stories I think are so compelling narratively. Is it's these like small or these few people who are like, through my faith, everyone's going to think I'm crazy, but we're doing it and we're saving this and we're doing this. And it's really hard to look at an underdog story and to like nuance it, because the underdog, you want them to win.
Right.
But then there's the question of like, what does it mean to win? And so in this story, David winning means that he killed and then decapitated another human being.
Right.
And so it's one of those things where it's like, I don't know, maybe like, how can we change what winning means? Because I don't know, in the underdog narrative, you're like, well, you want to like destroy the other team because they're doing good, so they must be bad.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay,
Yeah.
yes, that's also kind of a deep feeling of like, if someone else is doing better than me, it must not be right in some way. But I think so much of that also kind of taps into our kind of natural inclination to kind of pit ourselves against each other. And so, I don't know, as I'm reading this story and thinking about, like, yes, it's about overcoming, but it's also about not only overcoming, but kind of like vanquishing. And what does it mean? Maybe we can all be friends and we don't have to kill each other. Like, I don't know. Like, that's where it taps into to me, where I'm like, rereading this story and being like, oh man.
Yeah. Maybe there's more nuance in the
Yeah.
reading than just being
Because also,
small
like,
or mighty.
Sure, Goliath is kind of being like,
Yeah.
I'm Goliath. Man is also like real big.
Yeah.
What choice did he have to not be like a weapon?
Don't make us compassionate for
Sorry, I'm
Goliath,
sorry.
Lillian. That goes against my feeling of feeling indignant against Goliath. I don't want compassion. Come on.
We're all cogs in the system.
I'm not supposed to love thine enemy. Oh, wait. Oh, shoot. Do you mean we have to apply the teachings of Jesus to this story too?
Sometimes I think about it. Sometimes I think about
So
Jesus.
deeply inconvenient.
It often is. But yeah, I don't know. The mixed feelings we have about so many stories about.
But isn't that kind of the more? So this, I will say, so this year of the podcast, we don't normally like choose a scripture for the podcast. Like often Ed and I would sit down 5 minutes before and be like, what do you want to talk about today? And it was more like topical. It was more like topical ideas. This is the first year that we've ever like read a scripture at the beginning.
It's all I know.
Like, yeah. Well, we have over 200 episodes you can dive back into if you have some time to kill. much time. Yes, I'm excited for our 250th. I think that'll be next year.
Ooh,
I know.
we have to have a little party.
We should definitely have a party.
We can put little hats on top of our headphones.
One of these days I'm going to do like cat ears.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Halloween.
There you go. I digress.
Anyway.
But it's been very interesting looking at these stories because I feel like these conversations we're having kind of resemble like a Bible study situation, right? And the amount of like nuance, complexity, gray areas,
I'm nodding.
unknown. I see you're nodding. Thank you for explaining that to our audio people. And just the idea that like, even the stories I thought were fairly straightforward, I really knew nothing about. And I feel okay admitting that.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I've been associated with church. I've been a professional organist for 20 years. I've been around the church for longer than that. So I'm like, who I feel like I'm fairly churched as far as people go, I'm like, I had no idea. Zippity-doo-dah idea.
And I think this is partially because, like, when you hear a story, like, you can't read the whole Bible in church every Sunday.
Right.
So you have to cut it off somewhere. But there's always what happened before and what happened after.
Right.
Where you're like, I remember there was one sermon I wrote where I was like, oh, right before this was like the feeding of the 5,000. And I was like, wait. So Jesus must be exhausted.
Right.
And so like having the context, like leading into what happens next.
Right. I mean, context is helpful for reading Bible stories. What?
And so like anytime and so I feel like in my mind, it also is a Bible study. It also kind of gives you and the audience and our community like a kind of glimpse into what happens as we're trying to come up with a sermon to write.
Yeah.
Where you meet this text, you read it, then you like look at the book and you're like, well, what happened in my whole process? I was like, okay, what's happening in 1 Samuel?
Right.
And then I'm reading it and I'm like, and it has in my Oxford edited, like, this is a pro-Davidic story of like, this is talking about how cool David is. And I was like, that totally changes the context of talking about a cool thing David did.
Cool. Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, but also, what do people need to hear?
Right.
What do people need to connect to? You can't talk about everything all the time. So knowing this nuance, knowing this context, thinking about like, how can you simultaneously think about and acknowledge the complexity of a story, but also like not go overboard explaining the intricacies of the Deuteronomistic, whatever.
Yep.
Context of like it's this fine line.
It is a fine line. And I think it's also really interesting because I would imagine there's a solid subset of our listeners that also either watch or participate in person with the online service. And I think, at least for me, I always find such a deeper experience on Sunday having had these conversations.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I know what's happening for months.
There have been one or two times where I've kind of like pre-done a sermon.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, this is the shorter version. It's a little punchier.
No, I appreciate it because for me, it's like I get more around it.
Yeah.
And it's not like, repetition is a good thing.
Sometimes
You
to get
know?
it to penetrate your forehead.
Yeah. Nice callback. Nice callback. It's very interesting. And I appreciate these opportunities to dive more deeply into it. Because I will admit, to out myself then on the other side, I haven't done a ton of Bible studies in my life. So this is also like a fun opportunity. And I hope you, our friends listening, are enjoying it as much as I am, because I'm having a great time. It'll be interesting to see what we do come November 30th.
So exciting.
Which is our next whole series. That's when this ends, if you can possibly believe it. It's actually getting close to ending.
Oh my gosh.
And so we're
on week.
We're going to be lectionary people. 45?
45 of 52?
Yeah. I think there's actually technically 53.
Yeah.
But it didn't make such a punchy title, so I went with 52.
With a bonus.
With a bonus. I think I actually labeled, hold on, I have to look because now that you mention it, I think I actually wrote bonus on it. Yeah, bonus. Woohoo. Which is 1 Corinthians. We ended it with 1 Corinthians, like you do. Well, friends, it's time to wrap up. I have a meeting I have to go to. Just keeping it real. And thank you, Lillian.
Thank you.
And thank you all so much for joining us. Roundhill Radio is brought to you by the friends and members of Roundhill Community Church. For more information, please visit roundhillradio.org.
If you enjoyed this podcast, There are a few things that you can do that would make a big difference to us. Like the video, subscribe if you aren't, and click the notification bell and select all. Thank you.